I need to tell someone what I did, and you're going to think I'm terrible, but there's something about grief that nobody understands unless they've watched someone drown in it for months on end. Everyone says I'm heartless. They say I kicked a man when he was down, that I destroyed someone who was already broken. But they weren't there in the apartment that smelled like unwashed sheets and old takeout containers. They didn't watch the person they loved disappear into a black hole while refusing every hand that reached in to pull him out. The worst part about what happened isn't that I told my boyfriend to get over his father's death. It's what I was really trying to say when those words came out of my mouth, and why I needed him to snap out of it so badly. If I don't tell this story the right way, you'll never understand why I felt so desperate that night. But once you know what I know, you'll see why those 4 words, "just get over it," felt like the only option I had left. I'm going to tell you everything, including the real reason I needed Marcus to come back to himself. And the part that makes me look worst, I'm saving that for later because you need to understand who we were before his dad died. You need to see what we had, so you can understand what I was so terrified of losing. Marcus and I met 3 years ago at a friend's rooftop party in Brooklyn. He was the guy everyone gravitated toward, not because he was loud or tried too hard, but because he had this way of making whoever he talked to feel like the most interesting person in the room. When he asked about my job as a museum curator, he didn't just nod politely. He asked follow-up questions about Renaissance art restoration techniques for 20 minutes, and I could tell he actually cared about the answers. We moved in together after 8 months. Too fast, my mom said, but it felt right. Marcus was a software engineer who worked from home, and I loved coming back to our apartment after long days at the museum to find him cooking dinner, usually something ambitious he'd never tried before. He'd have jazz playing and a glass of wine waiting for me. We'd eat and talk for hours about everything and nothing. Our life together felt easy in a way relationships never had for me before. His dad, Robert, was this larger-than-life retired contractor who taught Marcus everything about being handy. Marcus worshipped him. They'd talk on the phone twice a week, and every other Sunday we'd drive out to New Jersey for family dinner. Robert would show Marcus whatever project he was working on in the garage, and they'd disappear for hours while I helped Marcus's mom, Linda, in the kitchen. I liked Robert fine, but I'll be honest, those Sunday dinners sometimes felt like an obligation. My own parents were more distant, less involved, and I'd built my adult life around independence. The tight-knit family thing wasn't something I grew up with, and sometimes the intensity of their bond made me feel like an outsider. When Robert had his heart attack last March, everything changed overnight. Linda called us at 6 in the morning. By the time we got to the hospital, he was already gone. Fast and massive, the doctor said. He probably didn't feel much pain. That was supposed to be a comfort. The first few weeks I understood. Marcus was devastated but functional. He cried during the funeral. He took a week off work. I held him when he needed to be held and gave him space when he needed to be alone. I thought we were doing this the right way, handling it together. But then the week turned into 2, then 3. Marcus stopped showering regularly. He'd sit on the couch for hours, staring at his phone, scrolling through old photos of his dad. He'd start crying at random times, during dinner in the middle of the night, once while we were watching a comedy special that had nothing to do with fathers or death or anything sad at all. This is normal, I told myself. Grief doesn't have a timeline. I'd read all the articles. I knew the stages, the process, the importance of being patient. By week 6, Marcus still hadn't gone back to work. His company was being understanding, but I could tell his boss was getting concerned from the careful way he worded his emails. The apartment was a mess because Marcus had stopped doing any cleaning, and I was pulling double duty trying to keep things livable while working full-time myself. Maybe you should see someone, I suggested gently one night. A therapist, someone who specializes in grief. I'm fine, Marcus said, not looking up from his phone. I just need time. Wasn't fine and time wasn't helping. If anything, he was getting worse. I started researching grief counselors, but every time I brought it up, Marcus shut down. He said therapy was too expensive, that he'd get better on his own, that talking to a stranger wouldn't bring his dad back, so what was the point? His mom called me in month 3, which surprised me. Linda and I were friendly but not close. How's he doing? She asked. I didn't know what to say. I settled on he's struggling. I'm worried, Linda said. When I call him, he barely talks. He sounds so flat. He's the same here, I admitted, feeling guilty for some reason, like I was betraying Marcus by being honest. I've tried to get him to see someone, but he won't. His father wouldn't want this, Linda said quietly. Robert would want Marcus to live his life. After we hung up, I felt this growing frustration that I'd been pushing down for weeks. Marcus's dad wouldn't want this. I wouldn't want this. Nobody would want their loved one to completely fall apart. So why was Marcus letting himself spiral? Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Marcus's company called. His boss, trying to be gentle about it, explained that they needed Marcus to either return to work or take official leave. They couldn't hold his position indefinitely. When I told Marcus, he just nodded. So what are you going to do? I asked. I don't know. Marcus, you have to do something. You can't just, can you not right now? His voice had an edge I wasn't used to. My dad is dead. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient for you. That night I lay in bed next to him, listening to him breathe, and I felt so alone. The person I loved was right there, close enough to touch, but he was completely unreachable. I missed him so much it physically hurt, and he was lying 12 inches away from me. Month 4 was when I started getting really angry. Not at grief itself, but at Marcus's refusal to do anything about it. He wouldn't try therapy, he wouldn't go back to work, he wouldn't take medication, he wouldn't read the books I bought him about processing loss. He just sat in his sadness like it was a room he'd decided to live in forever. My friend Jenna noticed the change in me. You seem stressed, she said over lunch one Saturday. I didn't mean to, but everything came spilling out. The mess, the crying, the stagnation, the way Marcus had become a shell of himself. That sounds really hard, Jenna said carefully. For both of you. I just don't know what to do, I said. Nothing I try helps. Maybe nothing you try is supposed to help, Jenna said. Maybe he has to figure this out himself. But he's not figuring it out, he's just drowning. Jenna looked at me with something like pity. How long are you willing to wait? The question hit me wrong. I wanted to say as long as it takes, because that's what you're supposed to say when you love someone. But the honest answer, the one that made me feel like a terrible person, was not much longer. I was exhausted. I was lonely. I was starting to resent coming home to our apartment because I never knew what version of Marcus I'd find. The crying version, the catatonic version, or the rare moments where he seemed almost normal before crashing again. Everyone online thought I was fine. I posted old photos of Marcus and me from before, throwback pictures with captions about missing summer or whatever. I didn't post anything about what our real life looked like because how do you caption that? My boyfriend hasn't showered in 3 days and I'm at my breaking point. You can't say that. People would think you're a monster. But privately I was falling apart too. I started crying on my commute to work. I snapped at my coworkers over minor things. I couldn't focus on anything. My boss asked if everything was okay, and I said yes because what else do you say? Month 5, Marcus finally agreed to go to a grief support group. I felt this huge relief. Finally, progress. Finally, something that might help. He went to one meeting and never went back. How was it? I asked when he came home. Depressing, he said. It's a grief support group. Of course it's depressing. Everyone there was a mess. I don't need to sit in a circle with other messed up people talking about how sad we all are. Marcus, you're not even trying. You don't get it, he cut me off. You can't get it. Your parents are still alive. You've never lost someone like this. He was right, and that made me even angrier. I hadn't lost a parent, so I didn't get it. But I was watching the man I loved disappear, and that had to count for something, didn't it? The real breaking point came on a random Tuesday in month 6. I came home from work to find Marcus exactly where I'd left him that morning, on the couch, in the same clothes, surrounded by the same mess. Something in me just snapped. Did you do anything today? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. I called my mom. That's it. What do you want from me? What I wanted was my boyfriend back. I wanted the man who cooked dinner and asked about my day and made plans for our future. I wanted someone who was present, who participated in our life together, who tried. But what I said was, I want you to get over this. The silence that followed was deafening. Get over this, Marcus repeated slowly. That came out wrong, I backpedaled, but it was too late. I just mean, you think I should get over my dad's death. His voice was flat cold. I think you should try to move forward. It's been 6 months. 6 months, he laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a time limit I wasn't aware of? Should I have scheduled my grief to end at a convenient time for you? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Chloe? Please explain to me how I should be grieving. I knew I should stop. I knew I was making it worse. But 6 months of frustration came pouring out. I'm saying you're not even trying. You won't go to therapy, you won't go to the support group, you won't take any of the advice anyone gives you. You just sit here feeling sorry for yourself while our life falls apart around you. Feeling sorry for myself, Marcus repeated. My dad died and you think I'm just feeling sorry for myself. I think you're stuck, I said, and I think you're choosing to stay stuck because it's easier than doing the work to get better. Marcus stood up. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. "You need to leave," he said quietly. "Marcus, get out, right now. Can we please just talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about. You told me how you really feel, now I'm telling you to leave." I thought he meant leave the room, give him space. But the next morning, I woke up on Jenna's couch to 17 missed calls from Marcus's mom and a text from Marcus that said, "Come get your things when I'm not here. I'll be at my mom's all weekend." Just like that, we were over. 3 years together, ended by 4 words I couldn't take back. Everyone took his side, which I expected. Even Jenna, who'd listened to me complain for months, gave me this look when I told her what I'd said. "You told him to get over his dad's death?" she asked. "I told him to try to move forward. It's not the same thing." But it was the same thing to everyone else. I became the villain in the story, the heartless girlfriend who dumped a grieving man. Never mind that he'd ended it, not me. Never mind that I'd spent 6 months trying to help while losing myself in the process. I moved my stuff out that weekend while he was gone. Walking through our apartment one last time, seeing all the evidence of our life together, the photos on the walls, the bookshelf we'd built together, the coffee maker he'd bought me for my birthday, I broke down. I sat on the kitchen floor and sobbed harder than I had in the entire 6 months since Robert died. Because here's the truth, the thing I haven't told anyone: I didn't really want Marcus to get over his dad's death. I wanted him to get over it enough to choose me too. I wanted him to love me more than he loved his grief. And that's what made me the terrible person everyone thought I was. I tried to move on. I threw myself into work. I went on dates that went nowhere. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that I couldn't light myself on fire to keep someone else warm, all those platitudes people say about leaving difficult relationships. But late at night, I'd scroll through old photos of Marcus and me, and I'd feel this crushing regret. Not for leaving, I didn't leave, he kicked me out, but for how I'd handled it. For letting my frustration override my compassion. For making his grief about me. 3 months after the breakup, I saw Marcus at a coffee shop in Park Slope. My stomach dropped. He was with a group of people, laughing at something someone said. He looked good, healthy, like he'd been sleeping and eating and living again. He saw me too. For a moment our eyes met. I waited for him to look away, to pretend he hadn't seen me, but instead he walked over. "Hey," he said. "Hi." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "You look good." "Thanks, I'm doing better." "That's good." "That's really good." I meant it, but it also hurt. He was better now without me. "Did you end up going back to therapy?" "Yeah, actually, about a month after he trailed off. It's helping." I wanted to ask if he'd needed to lose me to finally get help. I wanted to ask if he ever thought about what I'd been going through while he was drowning. I wanted to ask if there was any chance, now that he was better, that we could try again. Instead I said, "I'm glad you're doing well." "You too, Chloe." "Take care." He walked back to his friends and I left the coffee shop without ordering. I cried the whole walk home. That's when I really understood what I'd lost. Not the Marcus who couldn't get out of bed, but the Marcus who existed on the other side of that grief. The version of him who'd done the work and come out stronger. I'd given up right before the breakthrough, and now someone else would get the benefit of his healing. I thought about reaching out. I drafted texts I never sent. "I'm sorry. I miss you. Can we talk?" But what was the point? He'd moved on. He'd gotten over his dad's death, and he'd gotten over me instead. My sister called me out on it one night when I'd had too much wine and was feeling particularly sorry for myself. "You need to let this go," she said. "It's been 6 months since the breakup." The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months, the same amount of time I'd waited for Marcus to snap out of his grief before I lost my patience. "I just thought we'd find our way back to each other," I admitted. "Did you ever actually apologize to him?" my sister asked. I thought about it. In the immediate aftermath, when I was still defensive and angry, I hadn't. And then too much time had passed and it felt too late. "Not really," I said. "Then how would you find your way back?" She was right, but I was too proud or too scared or too something to do anything about it. So I just stayed stuck in my own grief, mourning the relationship, unable to move forward. Choosing to stay stuck because doing the work to get better was too hard. I was doing exactly what I'd accused Marcus of doing. A year after the breakup, I found out through mutual friends that Marcus was seeing someone. A teacher named Sarah who volunteered at the same community center where he'd finally found a grief support group that worked for him. They'd bonded over their shared experiences of loss. Her mom had died of cancer 2 years earlier, of course. Of course he'd found someone who understood his grief in a way I never could or would. Someone patient enough to meet him where he was instead of demanding he be somewhere else. I wanted to be happy for him, and part of me was. But mostly I felt this deep, aching jealousy. Not just because he'd moved on, but because he'd become the person I always knew he could be, and I didn't get to be part of that version of his life. My friends stopped mentioning him around me. When we'd all get together and someone would bring up Marcus, the conversation would shift quickly, awkwardly. I was the bitter ex who couldn't move on, and everyone was tiptoeing around me. "You're allowed to be sad," Jenna told me one night. "But at some point, you have to decide if you're going to let this define you." I hated that she was right. I started therapy, which I probably should have done a year earlier. My therapist, Dr. Chen, had this annoying way of asking questions that made me confront things I'd been avoiding. "What do you think you were really saying when you told Marcus to get over it?" she asked during one session. "I was frustrated," I said. "I was at the end of my rope." But what was underneath the frustration? I sat with that for a long time. What was underneath? "I was scared," I finally said. "I was scared that if he didn't get better, I'd lose him, and I was scared that I wasn't enough of a reason for him to try." "Did you ever tell him that?" "No, I just told him to get over it, which made him think I didn't care at all." Dr. Chen nodded. "Sometimes we say the exact opposite of what we mean when we're afraid. We push people away before they can leave us." That session broke something open in me. For the first time, I really understood what I'd done. I hadn't just been insensitive or impatient. I'd been so scared of losing Marcus that I'd sabotaged the whole relationship. I'd made his grief a referendum on our love, and when he couldn't perform recovery on my timeline, I'd taken it as proof that I didn't matter to him. But his grief was never about me. It was about his dad. And by making it about me, I'd become one more thing he had to manage during the worst period of his life. I wrote him a letter, not to send but to get it all out. I apologized for my impatience, my insensitivity, my inability to separate his grief from my own fear of abandonment. I acknowledged that I'd made an impossible situation worse by centering myself when he'd needed support. Dr. Chen read it and asked, "Do you want to send it?" "What's the point?" I said. "He's moved on. He's happy." This would just be me unburdening myself onto him again, making it about what I need. "That's very self-aware," Dr. Chen said, and I couldn't tell if she agreed or was pushing me to reconsider. I never sent the letter, but writing it helped me start to forgive myself, which was something. I tried dating again, more seriously this time. I went out with a lawyer named David for 3 months. He was kind and stable and completely wrong for me. When he asked why I was pulling away, I told him the truth. "I'm not over my ex," I admitted. "I thought I was, but I'm not, and it's not fair to you." David took it well, better than I would have. "Can I give you some advice?" he said. "If you're not over him, tell him. The worst that happens is you get closure. The best that happens is you get another chance." But I knew there wouldn't be another chance. Marcus had gotten over me. He'd moved on, built a new life, found someone better suited to him. Reaching out would be selfish, or maybe I was just too scared of rejection. Maybe I was still pushing away before I could be left. 2 years after the breakup, I ran into Linda at a farmer's market in Union Square. She saw me before I could escape. "Chloe," she said, and pulled me into a hug that surprised me. "How are you?" "I'm okay," I said. "How are you? How's Marcus?" "He's good. He and Sarah just moved in together, actually." I felt like I'd been punched, even though I'd known they were serious. Moving in together, that had been ours, our milestone, our story. Linda must have seen something on my face because her expression softened. "I know how things ended between you two," she said. "Marcus told me, and I want you to know that I never blamed you." I stared at her, shocked. "You didn't." "Robert's death was hard on me too," Linda said. And I had my moments where I wanted to scream at everyone to just snap out of it and be normal again. Grief is hard on the grieving person, but it's also hard on everyone around them. You were in an impossible situation. I felt tears welling up. Linda, of all people, offering me absolution. "I could have been kinder," I said. "I should have been more patient." "Maybe," Linda agreed. "But you were also young and dealing with something you'd never experienced. We all do the best we can with what we know at the time." She hugged me again before leaving, and I stood in the middle of the farmer's market crying while strangers walked around me. That conversation changed something. Not everything. I was still sad, still full of regret. But I started to believe that maybe I wasn't the complete villain in this story. Maybe I was just a flawed person who'd made mistakes during an impossible situation. I thought about what Dr. Chen had said about self-awareness and unburdening. I thought about David's advice to reach out. I thought about Linda's forgiveness. And I decided to send the letter. I rewrote it first, taking out the parts that were about me and my feelings, focusing instead on a simple, genuine apology. I acknowledged what I'd said, why it was wrong, and how sorry I was for adding to his pain during the worst time of his life. I didn't ask for anything, No second chance, no forgiveness, no response. I just wanted him to know that I understood now what I hadn't understood then. I sent it on a Tuesday, 2 years and 4 months after he'd told me to leave. He never responded. I told myself that was okay, that I hadn't sent it expecting a response. But every day I checked my email, my phone, hopping for something, an acknowledgement. A thank you, anything. After 3 weeks of silence, I accepted that the letter had been for me, not him. It was my way of closing the chapter, even if he'd closed it years ago. Life went on. I got promoted at work. I moved to a new apartment in Prospect Heights. I adopted a cat named Mr. Darcy. I went on dates that sometimes turned into relationships that eventually ended. I built a life that was full and good and mine. But sometimes, late at night, I'd still think about Marcus. I'd wonder if he ever thought about me, if he ever regretted how things ended, if some part of him missed what we had before everything fell apart. I'd wonder if he kept my letter or threw it away. If he read it once or multiple times. If it meant anything to him at all. 3 years after the breakup, I was at a friend's wedding in Williamsburg when I saw him. Marcus was there with Sarah, and they looked happy in that comfortable way couples do when they've built a real life together. She was laughing at something he'd said, and he had his hand on her back in a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. I thought about leaving, but then Marcus saw me. For a moment, we just looked at each other across the room. Then he excused himself from Sarah and walked over. "Chloe," he said, "I didn't know you'd be here." "Friend from college," I explained. "You." Sarah went to grad school with the bride. We stood there in awkward silence until Marcus said, "I got your letter." My heart started racing. "You did?" "I did. I'm sorry I never responded. I didn't know what to say." "You didn't need to say anything," I said quickly. "I didn't send it expecting." "It meant a lot," Marcus interrupted. "Really, it helped me understand things better, about that time about us." "I'm glad," I said and meant it. "I'm sorry too," Marcus said, "for shutting you out, for not trying harder. For making you feel like you didn't matter when you were trying so hard to help. You were grieving, you get a pass." "I don't think anyone gets a complete pass," Marcus said. "We both could have done things differently." Sarah approached then, and Marcus introduced us. She was warm and kind, and I could see why he loved her. I could see that she was good for him in ways I probably never was. After they walked away, I felt something unexpected: peace. Not closure exactly, because I don't think you ever fully close the door on someone you really loved. But acceptance, maybe. Acceptance that we'd both been doing our best in an impossible situation. That sometimes love isn't enough when two people are in completely different places. That you can be right and wrong at the same time. I left the wedding early and walked home through Brooklyn, thinking about everything that had led me here. The mistakes I'd made, the growth that came from them. The life I'd built in the aftermath. And here's what I've figured out. After all this time, I was right that Marcus needed to move forward. I was right that sitting in grief forever wasn't the answer. I was right that he needed help and support, and to do the work of healing. But I was wrong about everything else. I was wrong to put a timeline on his pain. I was wrong to make his grief about me. I was wrong to think that loving someone means they owe you a version of themselves that's convenient for you. What I should have said that night wasn't, "Get over it." It should have been, "I'm scared. I'm scared I'm losing you. I'm scared I'm not enough to make you want to get better. I'm scared that you're choosing grief over me, and I don't know how to compete with something so big." But I didn't say that. I said 4 words that I can never take back, and those 4 words cost me the person I loved most. Would things have ended differently if I'd been more honest about my fear, instead of hiding it behind frustration? Maybe. Or maybe we were always going to be a casualty of his father's death, collateral damage to grief's indiscriminate destruction. I don't know if Marcus ever wonders what would have happened if I'd been more patient, if he'd been more communicative, if we'd both been better at asking for what we needed. I don't know if he ever lies awake at night thinking about our life together, about the apartment that smelled like jazz and wine and possibility. What I do know is that telling someone to get over their grief doesn't make them get over it. It just makes them get over you instead. And sometimes they don't come back. I still love him. In that way you always love the person who taught you the hardest lessons about yourself. But I've learned to love him from a distance, to wish him well in his life that doesn't include me. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about being the villain in someone else's story: sometimes you earned it. Sometimes you really did do the wrong thing, say the wrong words, fail at the exact moment someone needed you most. And sometimes the only thing you can do is accept it, learn from it, and try to be better for the next person who needs you. I'm still working on that last part. But at least now I understand why I lost him. not because I told him to get over his father's death, but because I was too scared to admit that I needed him to choose me too. And instead of being vulnerable about that fear, I weaponized it. I turned it into an accusation, a demand, an ultimatum disguised as tough love. I told him to get over it because I couldn't handle my own feelings of helplessness. Because watching someone you love suffer and being unable to fix it is a special kind of torture, and I cracked under the pressure. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm not even sure I deserve it. I'm just telling you this story because someone out there is probably in the same position I was, loving someone who's drowning, feeling themselves going under too, not knowing what to do. And if that's you, here's what I wish someone had told me: your pain is real. Your exhaustion is valid. Your fear of losing yourself while trying to save someone else is legitimate. But so is their grief. So is their timeline. So is their process. And if you can't hold both truths at the same time, if you can't support them while also protecting yourself, then maybe the kindest thing is to step away before you say something you can't unsay. Because once you tell someone to get over their grief, you can't take it back. Those words will echo between you forever, a reminder of the moment you chose your comfort over their pain. And they might forgive you eventually. They might even understand why you said it. But they'll never forget it. And neither will you.